Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tsunami Healing. I'm so stoked today. I'm so excited. We got him here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a juggernaut of the themed entertainment industry with us here today in the living flesh, and I'm so excited that he decided to spend his time with us today. Ladies and gents, he has done it all. He is a writer, producer, and director, having worked with Universal Studios' Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood, Not Scary Farm, and Cedar Fair. Most recently, he co-wrote and directed Murder Co., which is the nation's first R-rated horror escape experience. And prior to authoring the award-winning book Knott's Halloween Haunt, A Picture History, which is the first comprehensive history of Not Scary Farm, he was a slider monster in the Knott's famous Ghost Town Scare Zone during Halloween Haunt, better known as Scary Farm today. And he is a crazed aficionado of the macabre and an all-around exceptional human being. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Mr. Ted Dougherty. Ted, thank you so much for being here with us. It's such a pleasure.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm ready to hang out with you for a little bit.
There are so many things that I want to jump into, and I just want to start with the first most recent project, Murder Co. I know you've been out there talking on different shows a little bit about it. I know the website is out. People have been experiencing it. So just tell us, how did you hook up with John Cook? How did the two crazy minds come together? And how has it been fun for you?
Wow, I've known John for several years now through his work at Not Scary Farm, and once he got more into the design role at Knott's, he and I began sort of on the outskirts of working together on various projects. I'd bring him in on some of my things, he would bring me in on some of his work, and we just kind of really worked well together. And so when the opportunity arose to work on this project, Murder Co., together, it was a fun type of experience, a fun advantage I needed to take real full care of, really. And so he had been thinking about the idea of this escape experience for quite a while. And so when he kind of pulled the trigger and decided to really produce this thing, we got together and really worked it out and wrote it out and kind of envisioned what it was going to be. And so what it turned out to be is like you said, that the first R-rated horror escape experience. So it's a lot more intense than what we would see at theme parks. And so this was a sort of a way for us to let loose and have a little bit more dark fun, I guess you could say, and entertaining guests in a different, more intimate type of experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm super excited. I haven't been there yet, and I think my time is running out because it's over at the end of this month, right?
It's going to be changed pretty soon over for a Halloween overlay. So, yeah, the sooner you check it out, the better.
Go check it out, folks. Your time is limited. Ted, that brings me to another thing. You were recently just at Midsummer Scream again this year for your immersive horror entertainment panel, and I was so happy I had the pleasure of announcing that for you guys, and it was really cool. I mean, you guys just talked about the immersion that's coming into the themed entertainment industry and kind of how it's playing with some of the events and things that are coming about, especially like your Murder Co. So I know you talked a little bit about it, but at the panel. But what are you seeing across the board, across the industry? I mean, it feels like every single time, every year, people are doing it bigger and better.
Well, I think we're living in a pretty cool time and a cool area for immersive entertainment. Living in Southern California, it's kind of this melding pot of all types of experiences, and so a lot of those types of attractions have been an influence on some of the work I've done, and really I'm a fan of the stuff, and so it's really great when we see attractions like Creep or Delusion, where there's a way of that they've discovered of putting together immersive theater with horror type of elements that create more personalized experiences for the guests. And that's almost sort of, I guess I would say, is almost the opposite of what we're dealing with at the theme parks. At the theme parks, we're dealing with huge audiences where there's just tons of people just flying through the attractions and filling the midways, whereas these more personalized experiences, I think a lot of folks are looking at those types of attractions as a way to kind of go off the grid a little bit to find different ways to entertain and seek entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I've been wondering, and I haven't had a chance to discuss it with people like you. And I'm excited to have you here. But these immersive experiences, they're huge here in Southern California. Do you see it as any kind of a threat to the theme park attractions? And with that too, do you see them kind of going to other places? Because I myself, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and I had no idea any of this industry existed until I came over here to California. So I would love to like bring some of these things back to the East Coast and different places. I mean, do you see these branching out anytime soon?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it came from the New York area. And so there's attraction Sleep No More, which is a famous attraction out there, and Blackout actually started out there. And so it really started on the East Coast and then made its way over here. I know it's also pretty big in the UK as well. Mm-hmm. And so I do see it spreading out to different markets. I don't feel that they're really a threat to the theme parks. I think the theme parks are going pretty strong with their Halloween events. But I know that the theme parks have incorporated some of those elements with their attractions. For example, a few years back, in Tampa at Busch Gardens Howl-O-Scream, they were the very first to present an upcharge, time-ticketed, personalized haunted attraction named Alone. And that went over very well over there, and within a year or so, Not Scary Farm came out with Trapped, which was more of that type of upcharge, intimate experience. So I think the theme parks certainly do experiment with those types of experiences, but I don't think they're going to be a threat to these huge Not Scary Farms and Universal Studios of the world.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you raised that too, and that's what I love about here. Is like out here, there's no ego. There's no real threat. It's friendly competition in the fact of everybody's just pushing everybody to be their best, and there's all different types of experience. So depending on what you want, you kind of have options. So thank you, Ted. I wanted to take a step back here. But I mentioned Midsummer Scream, and you've been coming to Midsummer Scream just about every year. And every time you come back, I feel like you got a new thing you're working on. So how was Midsummer Scream for you this year? I know it's been its biggest year yet. Did you get to walk around, see any other panels, see any of the Hall of Shadows? And what's it been like compared, to other years that you've been there?
Well, since its debut, it's always been an event that I'm a fan of, and it's simply just grown, and it's huge. And so, yes, I spent quite some time going through the Hall of Shadows, was able to work through it and get through all of the different attractions over there, which was fantastic. That's always really inspiring, and seeing home haunters have a spotlight on them, because during Halloween time, they're all spread out, and so we don't necessarily have the opportunity to see them during the season at their actual homes. And so with what Rick and the team have done at Midsummer Scream, by allowing and presenting these home haunts in the Hall of Shadow, is a wonderful way for them to get a lot of exposure to all kinds of different folks that wouldn't otherwise have been able to see them during the month of October. And then, of course, the show floor itself, to see all the different vendors, certainly spent some time going up and down the different aisles, doing some fun shopping, and that's just gotten so huge. And of course, all of the crazy presentations are just outstanding between Universal and Nas, Queen Mary, and Warner Brothers, and all of these different folks. And I was able to see some of the smaller ones, like the Epic Home Haunts panel for the film that's coming out later this year was really fantastic. So it's just a wonderful event that kind of runs the gamut of all things really that are in the world of Halloween and haunted attractions. And it's just kind of trippy to think, what are they going to do next? How do they keep going? Because they are just going upward every single year. And so, I mean, geez, I don't know how many more haunts they can fit in, how many more days or hours, what they're going to do next. But I'm sure they're going to present something pretty amazing.
I know. I'm just waiting for them to like have an actual witch like ride in from Salem, Massachusetts, and just land like on the roof or something. No, but yeah, Midsummer Scream is bigger and better every year. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see where we go next. I wanted to bring up a couple of things because Midsummer Scream last year was a lot of fun for me to watch you, Ted. As I remember, you had, at the time last year, you were working with Larry Bones on Into the Black, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
I wanted to bring that back up. Tell me how that all started. And I know Larry had been itching to do something for a long time. And I had worked with him myself, being a scare actor at Universal Studios, Halloween Horror Nights for a couple years. And I'm so excited that he decided to hook up with you to do that. So tell us, give us a little journey of how that started.
Well, it kind of goes back a couple years before, actually. I do a lot of work with a company named Hollow Studios, which is an immersive-based media company. And so they do a lot of 4D ride and attraction films, and they also do a lot of virtual reality. And so it was through that company that I co-wrote and directed the first 4D virtual reality horror experience at a major theme park named Fear VR. That was at Knott's Scary Farm. And so we really were pleased with the way the production came out and really liked that type of technology and saw that it could work really well with horror types of entertainment using VR, really kind of encompassing people's senses. And so when Larry Bones branched out on his own and was really looking at producing Into the Black, he and David Love, who is the CEO and owner of Hollow Studios, they got together and said, well, hey, let's do a virtual reality sort of backstory on what the guests are going to see through the maze inside Into the Black. And so the VR component for Into the Black was the backstory many, many years before of what the guests saw when they walked through the Into the Black physical attraction. And so this was a 4D VR experience that worked as a pre-show to the Into the Black attraction that Larry produced.
Yeah, and it's so cool because, at that time there hadn't been anything done like that before, and you got to work on it. You were the first to work with them. And this year it's coming back, but they've added things to it, and it's in a new location as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not really involved with it this time around, and so, but I have spoken to Larry about it. Very excited and happy for him. And so I think he's going to be at the Puente Hills Mall this time around. I know he's got a couple other attractions that are going to be in addition to the Into the Black attraction. And so it's called Horror World, and it's got vendors and games and all kinds of things. So it seems like it's a kind of a one-stop destination for the evening during the month of October when that opens up. So I'm really excited to check it out.
There you go, folks. Be on the lookout for that. And then, Ted, also, before I forget, I was really, I'm sure it was like for you being a big kid all over again, because it was just so cool to watch. You got to host the 45th anniversary Not Scary Farm panel. What was that like for you?
Well, that was really cool, and it was a big honor to be able to be part of that. It started several months before Midsummer Scream, Rick West and I were hanging out at a party at IAPA, which is the theme park trade show, and he presented me with what he wanted to do for the 45th anniversary of Not Scary Farm by creating this rotating panel where we would have different folks from Not Scary Farm's past be rotated in during this 90-minute panel discussion. So he and I worked together on making sure we got the right folks that were going to be present, and I kind of went to work and started seeking a lot of these folks out and reaching out to them. Everybody from former maze designers to entertainment directors to show people to actors that had all been involved with Not Scary Farm at least at some point in a prominent way during the 45 seasons that it existed. And so when the showtime came, we had a rehearsal, and we put together video montages with music and everything from Not Scary Farm's past, and it was really exciting. And so what's interesting, though, is the show's up on YouTube. You can kind of check it out if this is the type of thing that you're interested in. But what's interesting, too, is backstage. A friend of mine was really working as sort of almost this stage manager, where he was wrangling all of these different panelists to get them kind of waiting in the wings, ready to be rotated in and rotated out. So there was like this really kind of interesting choreography that was going on backstage as the presentation was going on. But it was a lot of fun. All the panelists had a wonderful time. I had a great time, and what a wonderful way to celebrate Not Scary Farm's rich history by having all of these sort of celebrities that had worked at Not Scary Farm's past all come together under one roof. And that's the kind of thing that Midsummer Scream does. They create these really memorable experiences that you're not going to see anywhere else in the world. For crying out loud, they got Mike Aiello and John Murdy and Chris Williams together for the first time on stage this past season.
I know, geez, wow.
So that's really wonderful. And so that's really a testament to the work that their team is doing on creating these wonderful experiences that have a lot of heart and a lot of passion, and it's really apparent that the guests that go are feeding off of that, and that's a big part of the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, wow. I mean, and not only was that cool, I mean, it was such an educational experience for me and the entire industry as well. Just to learn about, like you said, all the celebrities and designers that have come through all over the years. And you guys closed the show with that panel last year, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do you top that? There's nothing topping that. And then they come out with the panel with Michael and flew him all the way out from Florida, which was so cool. He was awesome. Michael, if you're listening, my friend, thank you so much for being here. It was so awesome to meet you. And that's why I brought that up, is because, he said he hadn't seen anything like Midsummer Scream or some of these attractions over there. So it'd be cool if maybe one day we could bring that to Florida, but another episode for another day.
Yeah.
So, Ted, very cool. I want to take you back even further before you kind of got into some of these things. You used to be a slider. Tell us about those days. Tell us how that happened. What was it like for you?
Well, I got to tell you, it started. Let me rewind even further. So I grew up as a kid that just loved Halloween, and as a 5-year-old, I mean, my parents allowed us to create like our own little home haunt. It was only open for like 2 seconds because I just wanted to go out and start trick-or-treating, but always loved Halloween and trick-or-treating. And I also loved monsters. I would draw like sketches of Jaws and Frankenstein, and I hadn't even seen the movies yet. I was just more like obsessed with the way that Jaws looked on the book cover and things like that. So loved monsters, but I also loved theme parks. Disneyland, Knott's, being raised here in Southern California, just really obsessed with theme parks. And so by the time I was a teenager, I discovered something named Knott's Scary Farm. And so I remember the first time that I went into Knott's Scary Farm, I was so overwhelmed. I was terrified beyond belief. I'd never seen anything like this. I literally ran and hid inside the general store of Ghost Town to get away from those sliding monsters. And that really had this huge lasting impact, because I had all of these things that I loved. It's a theme park, it's Halloween, it's got monsters, it's got everything that I got. So I began going every year religiously. And every year, the newspapers, just the way they do still nowadays with media and everything, they would advertise Knott's auditions, and they would have articles about how nutty the auditions were, and they would make all of these people do these crazy things. And I'm like, I'm not an actor. There's no way I'd ever be able to do that. In fact, a fun fact is I even took an acting class when I was in college, just so I could get what it took to audition for Knott's Scary Farm. But I took that class and I dropped out after the first day. I'm like, oh no, this is not for me. So I didn't have enough guts to do it. But years later, I eventually found that the auditions weren't so bad, and by the early 2000s, they actually did away with the auditions temporarily, simply because there were so many actors that were returning year after year that the spots were primarily always filled, so they didn't have to do auditions at that time. So that's the period that I got in. So my first year was in 2001, and I worked in a now defunct scare zone named the Swamp, which is right there underneath where Silver Bullet is. And they're actually having a new scare zone they debuted at Midsummer Scream that is kind of almost, at least in my mind, almost paying homage to the way the Swamp was, because it was right in the same location as this new scare zone. It's kind of a swampy type of theme with cemeteries and stuff. The original Swamp wasn't as much like that, but it was in this little midway area where they have the missions and all that stuff now. And so I was an undead scientist character that was uncovering these creatures that were lurking inside a reflection lake, and that's kind of what the Swamp was. And I was a slider, so my very first year we went around sliding, and we practiced sliding, and there was a certification test that the sliders have to take to show that you have control and can be safe, which is the primary concern, of course, and be effective in sliding. And so passed the test and was really super excited to finally work Knott's Scary Farm. So I worked in the Swamp for a couple of years, and then I went over to Ghost Town. And so that's kind of where the heart, at least in my opinion, of Knott's Scary Farm is. That's the original scare zone that debuted in 1973 for Knott's. And at that time, it was comprised of stunt personnel that worked inside the Wild West stunt show, and they were dressed up as monsters, and they roamed the streets of Ghost Town. So for me, by the time I got into Ghost Town, I was so happy to kind of really be walking the same steps as those first monsters did all those years ago. And I just loved every single second of it, and sliding and scaring and just really kind of strategizing scares, because one of the great things working at Knott's is that we're exposed to so many thousands and thousands of guests. So it's really a great opportunity to kind of hone your craft. And back when I was working in Ghost Town, the actors were left to their own discretion as to what constitutes character. It wasn't like we had any sort of director showing us that stuff. So it was left up to us, which resulted in constant improvisation and all of these different types of really personality-driven ghouls that were working the scare zones, which added a lot of cool variety. And so a lot of those things that I learned at Knott's during those years when I was working were things that I still use to this day when I'm creating roles for my actors and for projects that I'm working on, because there was such a great experience and training opportunity for all those years.
Wow, you can't see it, folks, but I'm sure he does. I have goosebumps. Like, is this it's just so cool to like dive into this stuff and talk about it. So very cool, Ted. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So from there, you had this amazing foundation. You know, growing up here in Southern California, being a slider, being a scare actor, just being immersed, you know, in these worlds of you know, character and setting and everything. What was the transition like for you when you started writing and you started directing and started kind of getting your hands on some of these projects and things that you wanted to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of started with after my days of monstering done at Not Scary Farm, looking at different things. I ended up doing research and writing a book about the history of Not Scary Farm. And one of the reasons I wrote that book was because for many years, Knott's Berry Farm did not keep really good archives for their Halloween event. I mean, back then, they didn't think that this event was going to be what it eventually became. So they didn't really keep great archives. And so I took it upon myself to really kind of dig in and research the archives, and spent 2 years of going through whatever archives they had, and spending hours on end at local libraries, going through microfilm for newspapers, anything that would have somebody's name associated with Not Scary Farm's past, just that way I could try to find them and see if they might have something that they can contribute. And so after a couple of years of a lot of hard work, I wrote this book about Not Scary Farm's history, and really blessed to have a little bit of success from it, and did a lot of book signings at Knott's Berry Farm, and just had a great time with it. But because of that book started getting out to other companies, and other folks started to look at me and say, oh my gosh, this dude knows a lot about this world famous event. And he's worked it, and he's produced some things over the years. Let's give him a call and see if he might be able to help us. And so that is sort of what the transition was. And so some of the earlier clients was Knott's Berry Farm themselves. I helped them with the reimagining of a classic maze that was originally from the 1990s, named Dominion of the Dead, and they brought it back. And it was the first maze that heavily revolved around the world of classical music at Not Scary Farm. And I was actually a music major in college, so I was able to tap into that a little bit, and really kind of help them in strategizing their scares and things that really worked with their designer at that time, a wonderful person, Catherine White. And so we worked together on that. I also worked on the 40th anniversary Haunt Museum that Knott's debuted in Ghost Town to celebrate their sort of milestone anniversary back then. And so being able to do things like that, and then certain gigs led to one another, and eventually I began working with John Murdy and Chris Williams at Universal Studios in Hollywood for their Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, just so cool. So Ted, you do all these different things. You're a director, you're a producer, you've worked on all sorts of different events. Is there any one thing that is more healing or therapeutic for you than the other? And, you know, how have all these things collectively just been, healing for you?
Well, I think the one thing that drives me the most is I told you the story about how terrified I was that first year I went to Knott's Scary Farm. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of cowering inside of a store, hiding from those monsters. To this day, to this minute, it's my drive to make guests feel the way that I felt that first time all those years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's so, that is healing. Mm-hmm. That is healing when I am able to see a production that I worked on, maybe stand at the exit watching the people running out, or stand off in the shadows somewhere and just kind of watch these guest reactions. The feeling I get watching them laughing or screaming, telling jokes with one another and having such a good time, to me, that's what it's all about. I believe that this is truly a great art form. And as with any art, the idea is to allow somebody to escape. It doesn't matter if you're listening to a symphony or if you're looking at a painting or if you're live theater, whatever it is. It's about that escape. And if there's something that I can do that helps people escape for just a little bit and have a little bit of fun and not have to think about their day job or the bills that they got to pay or all the other stresses that people have in their life, and they can just escape for a few minutes going through one of these experiences, to me, that's extremely healing, and it's really satisfying to make folks feel that way. And so it's kind of a twofold. I personally get that satisfaction, and it's a kind of a healing process for me because of all the hard work and all the trials and tribulations that you have to go through to get a production up and running, and to finally see them, these guests, happy. So that's my payment, that's my healing, and then in turn they are being healed themselves because they have that little escape for a few moments.
Yeah, so cool. Just that, I feel better. I'm smiling now. I feel like I've been healed just from this conversation. So with that too, Ted, you work on a lot of different things. You're a very creative person. You were put in this world to create things. Where do you find your inspiration? And kind of what is your creative process whenever you're attacking any project that you're working on?
Well, I mean, the creative process is pretty much the same across the board. So it doesn't matter if it's for an entire event, it's for one standalone attraction or multiple attractions at events. I mean, I kind of approach it the same way. And just taking one step at a time. For me personally, since I have worked, and I do work on a lot of different types of projects, whatever it is, even if it's something that I may not necessarily be like fully into, as far as just my personal taste, I still dive in. I still have a job to do. So I still dive in and make the same approach. And so I get into the mind frame of whatever the task is, and so if it's whatever the theme is, whatever the attraction is, doesn't really matter. I still kind of have to make sure I get into the place of what that attraction stands for, and then once I get in there, then I really kind of take everything one step at a time and break it out. My work is very sort of methodical, I kind of think, in the sense of I just take everything one step at a time and really kind of break things down to different steps and to different tiers, so that way it's not overwhelming saying, oh my gosh, I've got to take this whole attraction, I got to do something different with it. It's like, well, no, it's not as bad as that. I try to just say I'm dealing with this whole attraction, and now I can take just one step, one room, one scene, one character from that particular attraction, and then that's how I'm going to deal with it. And then I just kind of start slowly building the blocks up one at a time, and then before you know it, then we're halfway through the attraction. Now we're completed with the entire attraction. And then once I've been able to kind of digest all of that, then it's a lot easier to kind of stand back and look at it as a whole type of experience, and then I can make whatever tweaks I need to for to help it stand strong as a whole complete experience. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's kind of the way, at least in my mind, I work it out. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up too. And I mean, I think it's kind of just like with anything, you kind of just start. You know, it doesn't matter where you start, but you just start somewhere. And then, like you said, before you know it, you have that one page of your book, or you have that one room of your event that you're working on. And then next thing you know, halfway through, and then you're done. You know, so yeah. Now on the flip side of that, I'm sure you've had to deal if there's always a thing of negativity, or I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or it comes out with something and people hate it, and it was an experience that you were just learning from. How do you deal with, because you're putting your heart and your soul into all these attractions and things. How do you deal personally with failure, Ted, and how do you bounce back from it?
Well, I mean, fortunately, we all fail, and for everything that gets off the ground and actually produced, I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of things that have failed and didn't make it to the forefront. And so I think with this industry, well, okay, with art, going back to art, art is a personalized situation, right? We are pouring our heart into a composition and into a painting or into live theatrical experiences, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes it just sort of is disappointing, and sometimes things don't come to fruition, but you just keep powering on, and you know that there's going to be another time, and there's going to be the next time, and just kind of, whatever doesn't work, I just kind of forget about it and move on to the next, and just really sort of focus on whatever the next step is going to be. And so, I mean, that's one way that I deal with it. But I also think it's important to learn from the failures. I mean, we have to you can't just have something fail and not take anything away from it. And so for every single thing that I've worked on, whether or not it has succeeded or failed, I mean, I've taken something, actually substantial things from those failures that I've been able to tweak and sort of take some ownership of it, and really try to make it my own, and say, all right, what did I learn from it, and how do I prevent that from happening again? What could I have done different? And some things, of course, are out of our control, but if there's anything that is in my control, I'm going to do the very best that I can to correct and rectify the situations, so that way I don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah, and then along with that too, do you still get nervous, like when you put things out? Because I mean, like for example, like Murder Co. It's the first ever R-rated horror experience, escape room. So I mean, were you guys nervous? Like, oh man, are people going to like this? Like, is this going to be a hit? Or do you just like, you know what? Let's throw it out there. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, I think for like specifically with Murder Co., I think John and I were both really confident in the experience as a whole. I think what we were more nervous, at least for me, what I was most nervous about was whether or not the puzzles, the escape portions, were going to actually be effective, because we had not done an escape room before, and I wouldn't necessarily refer to us as like escape room enthusiasts. I haven't done a zillion escape rooms, and so it's not like I'm one of those game master people that like sit around and design puzzles all day. I'm not that good at it, and so we did the best that we could with it. And so I was a little bit nervous about that portion of it, and very relieved once we saw guests partaking in them and actually being having it be challenging for them. But yeah, in answer to your question, I think for the most part, I have such tunnel vision in just trying to get the attractions open and going forward, and getting the actors ready, whatever that might be, that all of a sudden you're just practicing, just tweaking and producing and doing whatever you need to do to get this door open. And then once it's open, you're just kind of like, okay, is it working? And what do I need to do to fix it if it's not? And so I don't necessarily, I mean, I guess I get a little bit nervous, but it's not at the forefront of my mind. I think I'm more focused on the gig and the show, and making sure that it's operating correctly. So yeah, I mean, and you're asking probably the wrong person. You can ask some of my actors. I was probably driving them crazy because I was so amped and excited and probably nervous. But for me, I don't really look at it as nerves, as I look at it more as just that's like this huge adrenaline rush.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I mean, to me, it sounds like you're kind of too busy to be nervous. Like, yeah, no, I don't have time. We're just gonna do this. Like, we're gonna put it out, and people are gonna love it, and it's gonna be great. So just hit your mark.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and I bought all of that up too, because I know there's a lot of people out there, especially here in Southern California, that want to do a lot of the things that you do. Writing, producing, directing, making horror mazes and stuff. So I know a lot of those people are probably listening, or they're out there going to be listening. Ted, what would you say to those people who kind of want to get started in this industry, and kind of some things to reference back to and study up on?
Jeez, well, I mean, I think if you're passionate about it, that goes a long way, of course, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, that's a big start. And kind of like what I was saying, there's a couple of things there's quotes that I just kind of ring in my mind throughout a lot of these productions that I'm working on. A cheesy one, but I still love it all. I think Woody Allen said it, was success has one formula. Do the best you can, and people might like it. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's kind of what it is. People might like it. That may like it. Also, I know Beethoven, Van Gogh had this quote that came from an artist from way back when: "No day without a line." Mm-hmm. When people ask Beethoven about his success in composing these groundbreaking symphonies, no day without a line. So one day at a time, no matter what it is, you spend a little bit of time on it. Mm-hmm. You got to write one line a day. And that applies to whatever it is that you're working on. Van Gogh says the same thing, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No day without a line. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I've taken. So every single day, some days are more busy than others, some are more desperate than others, some are more overwhelming than others, but I spend at least some portion of the day working on this craft. And I think the idea is if you work on it just a little bit, you think about it, you write something down, after a while you're going to have a book. Mm-hmm. After a while, you have the makings of maybe a business plan, of a better stroke in your artistic paintings or drawings. Just a little bit every day. And of course, the more into it you get, the more that line is going to be, and there's going to be lines, and it's going to be chaos, which is what you want, right? So I think that's kind of the takeaway that I'm coming away with, that as I kind of look back in retrospect, that's what I've done with all of this stuff. Whether or not it was trying to be the best monster that I could be, one slide at a time, one guest at a time, to writing books or writing experiences or directing actors or writing whatever it is. It's just one thing at a time. And so that's kind of the way I am able to break it down in my mind, because otherwise, like I was saying before, it kind of seems to be, it would be for me a lot more overwhelming if I had to walk in and say, okay, take care of this huge mess, and just take care of, and just look at the mess as a whole, as opposed to saying, okay, where do we start? Let's just do it one step at a time. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the I guess I don't want to say advice, but at least the tip that I would give to some folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think that was really helpful. I think that's just a great concept for life in general. I agree. Thank you. Ted, we'll take a little step back here. Again, you've worked with Halloween Horror Nights, you've worked with Scary Farm, you work with these different media companies and stuff. Is there any certain projects that you like working on? Maybe not more than others, but have been some of your favorites? And I know they're all kind of different. So, what have been just some of your favorite moments, throughout your career?
Jeez. Well, I think a fun moment was working on Survive the Purge Terror Tram with John Murdy. Yeah. That was pretty cool. spending, days hanging out with him up at the back lot and walking through the Bates Motel and hanging out at the Psycho House and up that dirt hill and all that stuff and War of the Worlds and everything and Whoville and just kind of sitting there and strategizing and sharing philosophies and really trying to do something a little bit different with that attraction. That was a pretty cool thing to be doing, because yes, I was there for a job and had these tasks at hand, but just definitely kind of take a step back and just have that kind of moment to myself of like, oh my gosh, this is cool. I'm literally standing here touching the original Psycho House. Mm-hmm. You know how cool that is? And then especially once the event opens on opening night and just ducking off into the shadows and hanging out on the side of the Psycho House and away from people, from the guests, and you hear all the guests screaming and you can hear the sound effects and you can see all the theatrical lighting and all that stuff, but you're like, wow, this is really, really cool, of just hanging out and really soaking in that type of moment. So that was a cool thing. Last year, working with one of the premier screen parks in our country named Hobbs Grove, which is located in Central California. I worked with them and their designer, David Enlow, for an attraction. They debuted named The Portal, which was like a laser gun type of adventure where guests were shooting live attacking aliens and really just kind of sit back at the exit and watching these people running out and having had such a good time. And it's so cool because that was very much kind of like the way Infected was at Not Scary Farm. And so, but there was like these smaller teams of guests that would go through this course and seek and destroy these creatures. And 15 minutes ago, they were complete strangers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, as I see them running out, they're giving each other high fives, they're laughing together, and to me, that's a really cool, memorable experience that they're going to take home with them. And that means a lot. So those are just a couple small, cool examples, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Ted, as we start to wind down here, you just had Murder Code that you worked on. I'm sure you'll be doing a lot of things. You'll be checking out a lot of different events this Halloween season. But can you give us any previews of maybe the next project you're thinking about or what you might be working on that you are allowed to talk about? And maybe what guests and fans and people around the world can expect from Mr. Ted Dougherty?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have been able to work on Queen Mary's Dark Harbor for this season, mm-hmm. and so that was a lot of fun. Spent a lot of this year, at least the last several months, working with John Cook again, who's their new production designer.
Super excited about all of this.
Yeah, and the company that produces Dark Harbor is Epic Entertainment, and working with those folks, and was really, really excited to have been able to work with them. And for the most part, it's a complete reimagining of those attractions. And so, really excited to see those coming to life. I have seen some of the work so far, and it's fantastic and it's outstanding. And I've been a fan of Dark Harbor for many, many years, and so I'm really excited to see it going to this next level, because rest assured it is going to be pretty darn amazing. So I'm really excited to see that coming to life.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I think everybody, especially out here in SoCal, is looking forward to it. Ted, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and potentially work with you on a project, or, if they just wanted to reach out and say thank you, what is the best way to contact you?
Well, my consulting company is named Lunar Visions, and so they can just email me at Ted at lunarvisions.com, and it's just the website's lunarvisions.com. And they could reach out and we can chat or whatever. I'm always open to meeting new folks and kind of spreading things out. And it's always about networking and learning and being exposed to different occupations in the themed entertainment world. I am a proud member of the Themed Entertainment Association and a proud member of IAPA, and through those associations really have been able to meet some fantastic, very talented folks that we've been able to work with one another and stuff on different projects. And so that's a good way to reach out to me.
There you have it, folks. You can find them at lunarvisions.com. You can find them at a TEA event or an IAPA event. And then with that too, Ted, you were just in Midsummer Scream. Are you going to be on any upcoming panels, events, any shows where anybody can find you at coming up soon?
Not at this point. For the most part, I will be at IAPA. So, I'm not going to be exhibiting there or anything like that. But I plan on being there. So, but I won't be speaking or anything. But otherwise, most of the Halloween types of conventions and things like that pretty much end by this time of the year, as everyone is kind of gearing up for the actual season itself. So as of right now, I'm hoping to attend HauntCon in January, and I've been going to Transworld every year in St. Louis. So between those and Midsummer Scream, I'm able to kind of get a wide array of folks and vendors and meetups and all that good stuff.
There you have it, folks. You can find them in the shadows. Know that Ted will be watching whenever you're at any Halloween event.
Yes.
Ted, final question. And I ask all my guests this. If you could sum it up, with one phrase, one idea, one concept, for the Wavehealernation out there, people listening around the world, maybe it's a young boy or girl, they don't have a lot of time to themselves, and maybe this is the podcast that they're listening to. Or maybe it's somebody who just kind of had a rough day and they kind of need an escape from their stressful work job or whatever it may be. What would you like to leave the Wavehealernation with?
No day without a line. No matter what is going on in your life, if you're looking for escape, if you're looking for change, the way to make that change is to take it one day at a time, no day without a line.
There you have it, folks, from the man himself. Ted, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been so cool. It's been such a pleasure. You're always welcome back to the show, and we're looking forward to a lot of the things that you're working on. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Wavehealernation, Tsunami Healing, we are out. Until next time, grow the nation. We love you guys.